Welcome back. We're doing a little more painting here. Basically going to do most of the base coats on what we started last week. And then next time around, we'll hopefully be ready to do some more detail work and a little more technique type stuff. Right now, so what we learned from last time was, if we remove these guys, I mentioned that if I put the paint on too thick, some of this gravity will get to it. You can see around his face there, you can see some on his back, some of the white showing through, and that's just a matter, he is one color, so I was basically putting it on thick there, but as it dried, the paint ran a little, so I'm gonna have to go back and do some touch-ups on her. We did her face, we did a little more carefully, and so as you can see, the paint didn't run on it because it was put on thinner. I was going a little more carefully. Maybe a little around the nose, a little touch up with the flesh. Today we're going to spend most of our time on her just because he's all one color. I'll probably do him, touch him up a lot, and we'll get back with him next week, but I'll do most of them. Again, since he's mostly one color, there's not a lot I can show with him, so I will do some more painting. We will notice I got his tail back on. If you remember first time around, I used the green stuff to put that on, and if you watch the video, I put a very little bit of the green stuff because it takes up space when it fills up holes, and so you can't use too much or else the piece won't fit in right. I didn't have any super glue. I just used some plain old school glue, Elmer's glue type. And most people would say you don't use that when you glue minis together, but that's because in the old days all minis were made of metal and that stuff wouldn't work. But apparently for resin, it holds fairly well. Again, I could rip this off if I wanted to, but for everyday wear and tear, that's going to hold. If I were to drop him, his tail might break off, and his arms might break off if I dropped him too. That's just any kind of glue. But so that's something I just learned new is, since they started doing resin miniatures, plain old school glue can be used to hold them together. But that is all for him for now. Actually, one more thing on him. I almost forgot. We did accidentally smudge his eye up, so we're just going to do a real quick touch up on his eye just to get that looking better. Just to show that, in the past, last week we did the eyes and we tried to do the skin around the eyes, which is the easiest way to do it. But you can also just, if you're really careful with your pointed brush, you can just do touch-up work like that. And for this, since we don't need a lot of it, I'm just going to, instead of actually putting this on the palette, I'm just going to let a little drop come out. And I can take that directly from my paint. That way I'm not using up a bunch of paint that I don't need. I just need a little drop. I'm gonna bring him in, and again, I'm trying to work here around a video camera, so I might mess up because I'm holding this where I would not normally hold it to do this. And there, his eye looks a little better there. We'll do a little more touch-up with the brown around it afterwards, just because that could be done better. His other eye actually did a little more brown around the edge just to show the eye better, because that actually looks like a better eye than the other one. That's all we're going to do on him this time around. We clean our brush real quick. So, for her... Okay, so as I was talking last time, we sort of start on the inner parts and we work our way out. So I'm going to do her hair this time around, and we're going to start work on her hat. I'm going to do the inside of her cloaks because I'm going to have to, reach around to get the inside of that. That's it for that. So for her, cap that. I'm going to give her blonde hair. We're going to use actually a sort of pre-mixed blonde. Yeah, this is sort of a dirty yellow look. Let's maneuver some stuff so I can get to things. Get a little bummer. And again, we don't mind getting it on the inside of her hat just because we're going to be painting over that anyway, but we don't want to get it on her skin if we can avoid it at all. And I'm trying to keep her on camera as I talk, and some of these, again, I usually hold these closer to me when I paint them, so I'm having a little trouble even telling where her hair begins and ends at times, just because I'm not looking as close as I usually do. So I will probably need some touch-up work when I'm done with this, but it's still coming on pretty good. Again, fine tip brush, just go slowly, do it carefully. A little bit of over painting on the inside of the hat just so that we don't end up with unpainted resin sticking through when we're done. And again, turn her because you want to get the various angles of her hair. Yeah, there's a little bit of hair showing up behind her ear here. Getting inside the hair, like just there where, without getting on the skin, is a little tricky and might have to go back and forth, do a little hair, do a little skin, do a little hair, do a little skin, but I think we more or less got it. Looking better than the cow did at least. She's got some hair on the back here. I'll go ahead and do that now. There's a chance, like I said, when I do the cloak, I'm gonna want to go back and try to reach around the hair, so I might have to come back and touch up the hair again later in the back, but it's actually the back of the heart on her staff that I get there, but that's fine. That's fairly easy. That's one thing about doing someone with a lot of detail is you want to go careful. You don't use as much paint so you don't have to wait, because this paint will dry fairly quickly if you don't use a lot. You know, if you gob it on, then it takes longer to dry and you have to wait longer to do it. But this, I didn't put too much on because I didn't have to use too much because I wasn't doing a large patch of the same color. I was just doing her hairline, which is fairly thin. So I didn't have to use as much. I can paint another part of her, and then her hair should be dry enough in order to do more. She does have her eyebrows sticking out there, and I'm going to very carefully try to get her eyebrow just because I got the paint out. This is just a little bit of paint on the brush and just dab where the eyebrow looks. I know it's not on camera because if I try to watch the camera to see what I'm doing, I'm not going to be able to guide the brush as accurately. So I'm looking at the figure and not at the camera. And so if I move it off camera or turn it at an angle where you can't see it as well, I apologize, but that's just a part of the painting, is you want to get it to where I can see it as I'm doing it as opposed to where you can see it. Otherwise it'll look bad all around. There you go, got her hair done. A little more paint on that part of the hair. He's looking a little better. And actually, okay. Then we said we were going to do the inside of her cloak a pink color. Put some pink on my palette. This is just reaching around her other side of her staff, through her legs. This is one where I might have to pull it away from the camera just to get a closer look at it from time to time. Because where is her other arm? There's her other arm, yeah. I got some flesh tone over her arm there, which I can't see it as well, so I could see where it is at now. Again, if I were holding a figure closer to my face, I could tell that. But trying to keep it on camera, it's a little harder. There's a little bit at the very base of her robe here, where you can see some white showing through, and so I will dabble in there. And again, getting a little bit around, getting some on her. The unpainted surfaces is fine. I'll be able to paint over those anyway. There we go. That's mostly inside her cloak, a little more there. And again, that looks as good as it's going to get for now. Remembering that I've painted on surfaces that I'm going to be painting over anyway, so that's why it looks a little blurry. It's like, that doesn't look like the back of a cloak to me, though. That's because I got more than just the back of the cloak, because it was very difficult to reach. Yeah, let's move the water up here. That's what I'm doing. When you see the shadow moving in the background, I'm just cleaning my brush off. So, there's that. Okay, what else did I say I was going to do? I was going to get her hat next. And make her hat a nice little blue color, light blue. Well, actually that's a darker blue than I thought it was. We'll still use it. So, years ago, I used to watch The Frugal Gourmet on PBS. And the guy would do, I don't know, 6 to 7 recipes in a half hour. And he was able to do that because he was able to prep in advance. And, he'd start talking about a recipe and he'd pull out a plate full of, pre-chopped onions, pre-chopped tomatoes, whatever he was using. And just toss it in with whatever he was doing. And you can't do that on a painting thing like you can a cooking show. I mean, there's a certain amount of prep work you can do, but when it comes to actually painting, you just gotta start painting and let the people see it happening. So that's why if I tend to ramble, it's because, I can only paint at the speed I can paint, and I'm trying to fill in the words and talking about now another brush stroke, now another brush stroke would get boring. I mean, Bob Ross, great painter, good educator, but, Happy Little Trees, I think he made comments like that just because it's hard to fill in the silences. You want to keep talking, you want to keep people, knowing what's going on, but at the same time, there's a limit to what you can say about this. Yeah, this is actually a somewhat thin blue, so I'll probably have to go back and do it again. Or I just didn't shake the bottle enough when I put it on, one of the two. But primarily with this, I wanted to get the underside of her hat. Just because, again, we got the hair, now we want to get there. We're going to go very carefully, trying not to get in the hair. Again, this would be easier if I were able to hold her closer to me, but in order to keep her on the camera, I can't. This is actually a bigger challenge for me than I thought it was going to be. But live and learn, or at least you live. Douglas Adams. So, whoop. There you can see I've managed to get most of the underside of the hat. Got a little bit of the yellow from her hair blurred in there. But that's not a bad base coat, especially like I said, this paint came out a lot more liquid than I thought it was going to. That's one thing about this is I can just let it sit here for a while. It'll thicken up a little, then I can put another coat on. Or I can just let it dry and come back and put another coat on. And I was also going to make her outfit blue, I believe. Or at least her bodysuit, I'm calling it, just because I don't know what else to call it. This is one. I am going to have to probably do between episodes just because I'm going to have to look at this a lot closer. There you can see, the paint, the pink I just did is still a little wet, but at the same time it's dried out enough that I'm able to put the blue over it without really mixing the two. So that's sort of a idea of how fast this paint can dry if it's put on in thin coats. Again, that is a big if on my part, just because this blue is a bit runny. Like I said, I didn't shake it up as well as I should have. So we're going to do that. I'm going to do her boots a completely different color, but I'm going to paint a little bit over them just so that when I do paint them, they're ready to go. So the part around the collar, actually that's part of her cloak. I don't have to worry about that so much. Yeah, the collar of her cloak I'm going to have to do off screen, I think, just because that part, I can't do that at arm's length. So I will probably do that between episodes. We got, so I said I lost sight of her arm because I had painted over it. There it is. She's sort of got it on her hip. That's going to take a little more touch up. Then I'm going to have to go back and do her hand back in flesh tone again. That'll be more detailed work. Turn her backwards, see if we can see the back of her elbow. There it is. So we're going to want to get a little paint back here. Yeah, so again, this blue, it should already be going a little. There's one thing, where is that blue? I am going to set that back here where I can find it later, just so that I know I'm going to have to do a touch-up job, so I want to make sure I get the same blue. So I'm just going to put the bottle aside so that I know where it is when I do my touch-up job. I'm not reinventing the wheel with a completely different shade of blue. A little more inside her hat there that I missed before. So again, we'll have to do a little more touch up on her, but we're getting fairly good results. Oh, that's what I was thinking. There's her other sleeve. This big white glob here. She's got one of those flared sleeves, so I nearly forgot to do her other arm. That was one of the problems I always have doing the inside of her cloak was that I couldn't tell what part was cloak and what part was sleeve. And there's her sleeve that I wasn't getting before. And that said, we can get her outfit a little more. That's one thing about these. Sometimes unpainted, it's really hard to see details on them. Then you paint over them and you realize, oh, that's what that is hanging on their belt. Or that's what that is. That's where their arm went. And so, whoop. Yeah, you can see it was real liquid and starting to pool down towards the back here. Like I said, I am going to have to touch up her hair a bit. I can just, where it's real liquid, I can just smear it around with the brush a little more just to keep it. And actually the underside of the back of her hat. Yeah, again, you're trying to do this and where I can see it and you can see it is a little awkward. But we do the best we can. And this is my third video. If you've actually watched the first two and have coming back, then you either find it entertaining or educational, I hope, and so therefore I'm doing something right. If I'm not doing anything right, then odds are you aren't coming back. So, yeah, trying to find, there's her sleeve hanging down, and on the other side would be right about there. So like I said, I am going to have to touch up her hair a bit more as I try to get the back of her sleeve through here. And then of course the staff's going to cover some of this up, but that's life. Okay. Yes, this is actually going to be a shorter video just because the rest of it is going to be more of the same. So rather than bore you with that, I am going to just call it off for now. I will do, more of that can be done. More of this between videos, and then next time around we're going to talk about more detailed work on both of these, which I'm going to save for now. And like that, when we get the detailed work done, then it's just a matter of putting some sealant on them, which I use a brush-on sealant, so it doesn't take a new video to do that. That's something I'll do again between series. And after that, we will probably look at one or two techniques, which I could have used on either one of these and didn't, just because it's easier to talk about them as separate topics. And we'll be almost done. Then I'll maybe think of one or two other topics that'll have to come up. But there she is. Again, there's a chance as she dries, you can tell she's still wet just from the gleam on her, but as she dries, some of the paint may run. So I will be doing some touch-ups between episodes, and then, like I said, next time around, we will look at detail work on both of these. And that is it for this time around. There, she's looking better. Some white spot there. That's, like I said, she got a little like loincloth type belt thing around, which I'm gonna do. I'll do the back of her cloak and a bit on the staff. Like I said, other touch-ups. And other than that, I will see you next time. Goodbye.